All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Business Education Compact meeting. This is a monthly meeting where we talk about all things workforce development. My name is Mari Kosel. I serve as Executive Director of the Alaska Workforce Alliance. I see a couple of AWA, ASA folks on here. Just raise your hand icon if you're from our organization. Jacqueline Summers is here, Taylor is here, and Michelle has joined us, and that's who I can see on my screen. There may be others. I want to welcome everyone here today. The purpose of our group is to bring together folks from industry, from education, from economic development groups, as well as all the various industry sectors, so we can talk about, learn about shared priorities related to workforce development in Alaska. So I always like to remind folks that our Business Education Compact group was started in 1989 by Dave Reese, who I see. Hi, Dave. Good to see you on here today. And we've been meeting and talking about workforce development ever since, so very long time. Today's topic is understanding the opportunities in the construction sector by the numbers. But before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items. First of all, if you would not mind just clicking on your participant link, and if your name and your organization is not a part of your screen, if you could add your name and organization on there. I see a lot of you have already done that. That kind of just helps us know who is in our meeting today. And if you have an idea for a future Business Education Compact meeting, please go ahead and tell Taylor. His email's up here, and it's just taylor@alaskaworkforcealliance.org. If you did not get a meeting reminder for today's meeting, then you are not on our list. So please sign up on our list. It's very easy to do. Just go on our website and just click on join the BEC list, and you should start getting those emails. And please do not forget that next month, July, we take a recess because we're fishing. We fish in July. We can't be coming to a BC meeting, right? But come back in August because we will be talking about the fisheries industry in August. All right. Oh, I have the wrong title on here. So sorry. We are in June, not April. You can tell I used a template. However, the trends issue for this month is about how Alaskans are managing their debt. So this article highlights how average household debt per person has been falling. But then how credit card delinquency is on the rise. And it just kind of highlights the debt situation in Alaska. And I must confess, I myself have not combed through this. I just looked through the highlights this morning, but I am looking forward to sitting down and reading the Alaska Trends. Just encourage all of you, if you can get Alaska Trends right to your inbox if you sign up with the Department of Labor. They put an issue out every month, and it's always excellent. Also, this issue talks about how the state is modernizing their unemployment insurance system. It's a rather old system right now. It was really challenged during the COVID era, and so they're looking to update that system. All right. Does anyone have a mission moment for us? We like to start our these workforce meetings with a mission moment. This could be a reflection or a recent experience you had that connects us to our purpose and our impact.
I can go ahead and jump in on one of the recent events we had a great opportunity to attend. So myself and the AWA team had the chance to participate in the Homer Harbor Fest, which was an event that was occurring last Friday and Saturday on June 5th and 6th. And this was located right on the spit, right next to one of the main ports of the Homer area. And it was a pretty awesome event. It was bright, sunny days throughout, and it was a great opportunity not only to meet some fellow maritime vendors like folks from Honda, folks from KPC, as well as some of the Coast Guard vendors out there as well, but also getting a chance to check out some of the cool vessels that they had for, open house touring by Bay Welding. And just getting a chance to connect not only to the vendors, but also the community, introducing opportunities that are available in regards to maritime, especially with the heavy maritime community that Homer is. And yeah, it was just a fun experience, especially with the live music that was playing throughout Saturday. And yeah, I think it was one of those great opportunities to get a chance to not only expand our outreach to the community, but help folks know of the resources that are available through the organization and our partners. So that was a pretty awesome time.
All right, thanks, Taylor. Anyone else before we get started? Okay. All right. Well, then without further ado, I want to introduce today's topic, which is understanding the construction workforce by the numbers. So the construction industry remains one of Alaska's most important industries. It's construction season right now, so we will, we're seeing that out on our roads. We, in order to help us understand the construction landscape, no pun intended, we're going to start with ISER. Dr. Dana Defeo and Dr. Brett Watson will walk us through the data. They're going to help us understand what the numbers tell us about Alaska's construction workforce, where opportunities exist and what the trends are. And then following their presentation, I'll introduce Heidi Olson and Sarah Klebs with the Associated General Contractors of Alaska, and they're going to help connect that data to the real world situation of entering and that workforce. And so I'm going to start. I think we're starting with Dr. Dana Defeo. Am I right, or is it Brett?
I'll go Dana, Brett,
Okay,
Dana, I think.
one of you. All right. Well, I
Brett's
will
got
go
the
ahead and
slides.
I'll go ahead and introduce you first. Dana, so Dr. Dana Defeo she joined ISER in 2014. She's currently a research associate professor of education policy and director of the Center for Alaska Education Policy Research. She holds a PhD in curriculum and instruction from New Mexico State University, and Dr. Defeo's primary research interests include education for workforce development, teacher turnover, supply and demand, and representation and hegemony in the curriculum and institutional systems. And then also, Dr. Brett Watson is the assistant professor of applied and natural resource economics at the Institute for Social and Economic Research. Dr. Watson's research focuses on how natural resource wealth is created, managed, and distributed both in Alaska and across the United States. Dr. Watson holds a PhD and master's degree in mineral and energy economics from the Colorado School of Mines and a Bachelor of Business Administration in economics from Texas State University. So without further ado, take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. Can everybody hear okay? Sounds good? Okay. Well, good morning. We were asked to talk about construction, and we just so happen to have recently finished a report on construction occupations. So it worked really well. Here we are. We are really glad to be here to share an overview of the projected growth in the construction jobs in Alaska and how Alaska is prepared to train that workforce. I was going to introduce myself, but I think that's already happened. I'd only like to add that the first author of this report was Stacy Corey, and she said she couldn't make it today, but I actually saw that she signed on. So her contact information is going to be at the end of the presentation as well for any questions. I'd say Brett and I are pretty informal in how we present. So if you've got questions, throw them in the chat. We're very happy to take them as they come. Are we good? Brett, did you have anything to add, or should we just dive right in? All right, if we could actually go to the next slide, I wanted to introduce ISER first, just in case I don't know how familiar you are with us. ISER's been around for 65 years. We do work to help Alaskans understand social and economic systems that are at play in our state. Our research is done really to serve and support informed public and private decision making. So we're here for you, doing our research for the state. And CAPER, the Center for Alaska Education Policy Research, that's the one I direct. We're a center within the Institute. We focus on education policy. We're sort of the clearinghouse for education-related research at the Institute. We look at education and how education serves workforce development. We look at the teacher workforce. We also look at the unique challenges and opportunities that we have to deliver training and education in Alaska. So if we could go back one more slide. Sorry, Brett. These are the only ones that are out of order, I promise. It's important for us at ISER that our research be meaningful. And that means that the data that we analyze and the reports that we write are only useful if they get into the hands of people who can use them to make real, meaningful change. And that means that we have to work in partnership to develop our work. And for the report that we're going to share today, a lot of people gave input and helped with the work that we're going to present today. We are grateful to them. We are honored to work with them. Many are listed on this slide. We also want to acknowledge that no matter where we go in Alaska, we're on the traditional homelands of Indigenous peoples, and the University of Alaska Anchorage campus, that's where Brett and I work, that's located on the unceded lands of the Dena'ina. So moving into the presentation, I'll give you an overview and then we'll hand it off to Brett. The report we did was commissioned by the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities in 2023 in anticipation of infrastructure investments and projects that were coming down the pike at the time. So throughout the presentations, we're going to be I see you spotlighted my video. I don't look that good. You can, hopefully we'll spotlight Brett next. So throughout the presentation, we're going to be talking about key or priority occupations in the construction trades. And I want to let you know where those came from because there are lots of jobs in construction. But these are the jobs that were aligned to those anticipated infrastructure investments in 2023. However, as we went along, we heard from employers and we heard from the industry, and we modified that list a little bit to expand the list of priority occupations. So for example, when we were working with industry, we were encouraged to, and we added construction laborers to our list. And we also expanded electricians. We started with just linemen, but when we talked with individuals, we heard that we should look at all electrical trades, including linemen, electricians, and telecom. So there's more occupations than the ones we're going to talk about today. But that said, when I step back and look at the data, even as we're comparing and contrasting some jobs with one another, I see three common patterns across occupations. That's what we're going to talk about today. And that's construction is big and it's growing in Alaska, that we have a super strong workforce, but we would really like it to be more diverse, to include more Alaskans, more women, more people of color. And that Alaska, in the state, we've got the capacity to train workers, but we need to create access to programs for those individuals so that we can make more people to join the workforce. So Brett's going to kick it off with some labor data, and I'll hop in around slide 14 to talk about the primary data collection that we did.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. So I'll be describing some of the secondary data collection that we did as part of this project, some trends, and some of the patterns that Dana just noted. All of these will be through the lens of those target priority occupations that Dana described. She described how they were identified. And so just note that context, that these are for a specific slice of construction occupations. But I think that they provide a useful lens to think about the industry in aggregate. They're largely pointing in similar directions. So starting with a comparison of national growth trends, projections of national growth to state level growth. One of the things that stands out looking at our priority occupations here is that construction growth for these employment growth for these target occupations is projected to outpace, or Alaska is projected to outpace national growth in these occupations over the next 6 years or so. While growth in all of these occupations is projected to be positive, apart from cement masons nationally, you can see that projected growth in Alaska is significantly higher than it is at a national level across all these occupations, some approaching or exceeding 15% growth over this time period. So that's where standard forecasting methodology suggests that we're going. Let's take a look at where we are today and some kind of recent trends. Kind of a perennial concern in Alaska is the residency of the state's workforce. Looking at the Alaska specific data suggests that around 76% of the priority occupation workforce is already residents. There's potentially opportunity to increase our resident share among these priority occupations. You can see that the breakdown of resident and non-resident workers is not evenly distributed across these occupational categories. Non-residents are more concentrated in construction labor, for example. But kind of in aggregate across these occupations, around 76% of the workforce is already Alaska resident, but again, potential to potentially expand that number. What's the geography of this workforce? As with most of the state's population, this workforce is primarily concentrated in South Central Alaska, principally the Anchorage-Matsu Metropolitan Statistical Area, with the distribution across the rest of the state roughly consistent with the population of those regions. Thinking about other demographic characteristics of this workforce, age is also an important consideration of workforce demographics. Thinking about kind of the pipeline of the workforce, is the workforce kind of aging? What's the pipeline for newer workers across these occupations? Across the targets, construction laborers have kind of the youngest average worker, while truck drivers and operating engineers, that workforce tends to skew a little bit older. With the rest of the occupations obviously falling in between on that distribution. Dana mentioned some other important kind of demographic characteristics of this workforce. Women represent fewer than 5% of workers in the target occupations. They're most represented in construction laborers at 11%, and least represented in pile drivers, plumbers, and pipe fitters at 3%. Across these priority occupations, women have, on average, lower annual pay than men. This is a function of both wage rates and hours worked. And so there's kind of two pieces to that compositional difference. And you can see here kind of the wage gap by occupation, sorted from highest to lowest, with construction laborers having the smallest gap and iron workers having the largest. One of the other things that we wanted to consider was 5-year retention rates. So for somebody starting in a given occupation, how likely were they to be in that same occupation in Alaska 5 years from now? And so we looked at 2017 and 2022 and compared the workers that were still in that same occupation in those two time periods. Again, we've ranked the occupations according to that retention, that 5-year retention rate. Electricians and linemen have the highest rates of retention. Construction laborers have the lowest rates of retention. Just 15% of construction laborers that were working in that occupation in 2017 were still working in that occupation in Alaska in 2022. So really significant rates of attrition for construction laborers. So that's kind of what the hard data suggest. The kind of the secondary data collection effort. There's also a significant primary data collection and qualitative data collection that was part of this project, and I'll turn it back over to Dana to talk about that.
Thank you. I'll step back in. Our primary data collection moved beyond the administrative data sets that Brett presented, which looks at all workers getting data from the Department of Labor and other data sets that are maintained by the state. And we included surveys of Alaska employers and training providers. So on the employer side, there are more than 500 businesses employing construction trades in the priority industries in Alaska. We spoke with or heard from 117 of them. And when we asked them about their top challenges, they said that it's a lack of workers in general, but also lack of skilled workers for the jobs that they need, that they're competing amongst themselves sometimes for Alaska workers. They're concerned about the aging or retiring workforce and replacing that with new people, and that they're unable to find workers to go into rural areas to complete construction projects there. So that's going to bring us into the next part of the presentation, where we're going to be looking at the programs that we have here in Alaska to train workers to meet some of this demand. In the training programs, we're going to be looking at both secondary, or we call high school secondary programs, and adults. So here on this slide, looking at secondary career and technical education programming in Alaska, we sometimes call that CTE programming. This is what happens in high school, and high schools offer classes, but they also offer advising and credit transfer agreements that are going to help kids get into more specialized training after high school. So at the state level, just to give you an overview of the funding and the infrastructure behind all of this, you've got the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development. They distribute federal Perkins funds that supports the school districts, and the school districts are the ones that implement the programs. So they get Perkins funding. The districts use those to make classes, to train their staff, or to buy all the equipment that they need. There's the Alaska Workforce Investment Board, or AWIB. It gives grant funds to the Alaska Construction Academies and the state training and employment programs, so called the STEP programs. Those are implemented in school districts, but they also do stuff at regional training centers or unions and nonprofits. And they're not on this slide, but we've also got the Alaska Commission for Post-Secondary Education, the Alaska Association of Career and Technical Educators. They provide support to grow the capacity and skill of the workforce as well. So all of this infrastructure is sort of helping in the program delivery, but the programs are actually offered locally and delivered in the school districts through high schools and some middle schools. Alaska's got 54 different school districts. We've got a lot of different high schools in them, so how they do that varies. And to look at how they deliver programs, they have classes. They also have very specific sequenced related courses or career pathways. Some kids get to attend career and technical high schools. The high schools work very closely with industry partners, and they partner with post-secondary institutions for credit transfer and dual enrollment. Lots of things going on to introduce youth into construction, to help them pursue construction jobs. The next slide looks at the distribution of career and technical education in Alaska high schools. About a fifth of all of the career and technical classes that students take in high school are in the construction trades. And that's big because there's 16 different career pathways that are recognized nationally. So a fifth is a huge chunk. And the most common things that students are taking are metalwork and welding, general construction, and carpentry and woodwork classes. The two other reports that I did in prior years, they're not on this slide, but we looked at career pathways, we looked at dual enrollment, and we found that these opportunities, even though there's a lot going on, they're not evenly distributed to kids across the state. So there are more programs in urban schools, there are more programs in schools that serve kids from higher income families. So when we're thinking about the construction workforce and we're trying to find a workforce for rural Alaska, I think we have to think creatively about how to increase access for rural and low income kids. So the next slide digs into some of the training that's available after high school. There's a broad range of training programs and training settings in Alaska. You've got union training centers, you've got college campuses, there are some online trainings, there's some on-the-job trainings, there's local and regional vocational training centers. This was actually a much tougher project to do than we originally set out because there was just so much to try and capture and describe this landscape, but tons of different ways that we're working together to prepare this workforce. So in the next few slides, I'll talk about what we learned from our efforts to collect data directly from training providers across the state. So there's some training providers like the Alaska Iron Workers Training Program Trust. They provide very specific training for a very specific occupation. And then you've got other training providers like AvTech or the community colleges that provide lots of different programs for a lot of different occupations in a single facility. But we interviewed 18 different training providers, and we had 30 more complete surveys to help us understand what's happening with training construction in Alaska. So we heard from about 75% of the programs that are out there. And so when we look at this slide, it's looking at total annual admissions in 2023. You've got the skills training in blue and union training admission in orange. And we see that the number of people going into these programs differs by occupation. We're definitely training more carpenters than cement masons. But you can also see that the training differs by occupation. Some have more skills in pre-apprenticeship training. Others go straight into the union training opportunities. But there's so many different components coming together to help us build this workforce. And not on this slide, but I want to say most of the students who start these programs, who are admitted to them, some programs are a few weeks, some are several years. Most students who start these programs do complete them. So that means when students decide to pursue training for construction and when we can get them through the door into the programs, they really do follow through by and large and complete the program. Student retention is always a concern. I don't want to play it down, but my takeaway is that retention in construction programs is quite good compared to the other occupations that I study and that Brett studies. And so of course, we're going to always work on retention, but I think one of our big areas of opportunity is to get more students into these programs. The next slide shows the demographic makeup of students in training programs. Purple, students of color, red is women, gold is rural students. So when I step back and I look at sort of the big picture of this slide, I see that on average, these groups are very underrepresented in training programs. But I saw in Brett's slides that an even smaller number of these individuals end up in the workforce. So this is an area of opportunity. What's happening between students going into construction programs and working in Alaska? We're losing some people in that pipeline. And I think we want to look at how we can interrupt that pattern of attrition, because about 40% of Alaskans are people of color, 35% live in rural areas, almost half of Alaskans are women, but we just don't see that representation in the construction workforce, and that's an area of opportunity. In the next slide, beyond our enrollments, in our surveys and our interviews, we asked training providers to name the challenges they faced, and they told us that visibility is a big deal, helping people, including young people out there in the state, to understand what's available for jobs in construction and what the construction industry does. Funding is always a challenge. Of course, people noted that the proximity to training centers for students is a challenge. Like AvTech is in Seward. Some students come quite a distance to train there. That's tough for them, especially students with families. Balancing work and training is tough for students. It's also tough for the instructors in these programs, many of whom are training, but they're also working in the industry. There's the seasonal aspect of some construction jobs. A lot of people want more steady year-round work, and a lot of the work is a lot more physical than the work that I do or that Brett does. We do a lot of work at our desks. It's a little different than construction jobs. And also the program said that they're looking for more qualified applicants. Sometimes they have seats, but they don't have qualified applicants to fill them. So in our report on the next slide, we looked at opportunities for employers and training programs. We are going to get into some cross-cutting representation, but I wanted to provide a QR link to the full report because there's a lot more detail. You can dig into any of the occupations and any of the bullets that are on this slide. The picture of the report's on there, so you just know you've landed in the right place. The last slide, though, sort of has the cross-cutting recommendations that came from all of that work. So if you could go one more forward, Brett. I think, we've talked about these already and everybody can read what's on the slide, but I want to note that many of our partners and the training providers and the employers, they're doing these things, right? That we're doing this already. And our challenge is how to grow and build on these recommendations. I think one of the ways is to use data and the evidence like we're sharing today and to come together like we're doing today, to explore opportunities together and to really together build this workforce. So the final slide just has our contact information, myself, Brett, and Stacy, who is here today. And I don't know if you want to do questions now or hold them, but if you don't get a chance to ask a question in this forum today, we are happy to hear from you all of the time. We really value the input of the communities that we serve. Thanks.
Thank you both. I do think we have a couple minutes for questions. Let me remove your spotlight so we can see everybody. Really. Does anybody have any questions for Dana or Brett? Tracy from Autna, please jump on in.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Question about the remote or the rural village, or I guess rural areas lacking workers. Is there a way, I represent the ANCSA All ANC shareholder development group, and I think that if we had at least 6 months or longer knowing what projects are coming out to each of our villages. We do spend a lot of money training in village to be prepared, but sometimes we don't know what's even happening in our own neighborhoods. And I know that that's a huge amount of different people working on construction in many different areas, but I think if there's a way to just kind of get a heads up if that's even possible, that may help a little bit. And I know no one will probably have the answer to that.
Well, maybe we have some industry members in here that can, either address that or maybe do some solution finding for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for
This
bringing
is
it up.
Jenny. Can you hear me?
Yes, jump in,
Yeah.
Jenny.
Okay. I was wondering the same thing. I work for Doyon Foundation and we do scholarships and workforce. And I worked in the construction my whole life, but now I'm here. But I kept thinking, how do I figure out the same thing? And so I got on the workforce task committee with AGC to try to get a better idea of what is upcoming, because I was working in Caltag, Minto, Neana, and while we did hire a bunch of people, we still could have, if we would have known those jobs were coming in 6 months or even sooner, we could get more people trained. Because Bryce and Granite and all those guys love to do local hire. And if we have more people, that's more people they don't have to house, bringing in construction camps. I mean, it just all around helps. But yeah, that's one thing that I did was I'm trying to just connect with who's putting those bids out, the state and feds and stuff.
Jenny, did you say that was the workforce task force with ADC or AGC?
AGC.
AGC. Okay,
Associated
thank you.
Contractor, General Contractors, yeah.
Perfect.
So I'm hoping that's going to help me, and then we can get another group going.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you knew something that was going on in Caltag 3 years before or whatever, that would be a win-win there.
Mhm. Thank you.
We also have that struggle, and I mean, part of it is how the state disperses money. But when we're the general contractor in the region, it's obviously a lot easier. So I just wanted to mention that because if we get together to talk more about this, I'd love to join that conversation.
Thank you, Ruby. All right. We have one more question from Mrs. Grace Allers, and then we'll move on to our next set of speakers. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my question. I do see that we're facing a lot of the similar things that have been happening for quite a while. I have worked in workforce development for a long time, but I was part of the Women in the Trades in 2003. 2004. And so, we're still trying to get some equality within the trades. And it sounds to me like everybody is working really hard to make that happen with the tools that we've been given and utilized. My question is, have we begun to look more into how we can equalize that by creating a state apprenticeship agency which would monitor, create, and regulate programs to be able to give it back to the people that are on this call right now, give it back to the people that are directly involved with creating, maintaining, and monitoring employment in Alaska. Have we looked into this regarding the legislation that was just in the State House, and how many people are aware that this is a possibility in Alaska? Because I believe that this would be the solution that a lot of people might be looking for as a Alaskan and somebody that very much cares and wants to bring opportunity to the people that have the biggest challenges finding jobs as well. So workforce support, growth within economic rural areas, especially that are most challenged getting employees. It would create a school to apprenticeship where kids would go to school and they would be able to begin their apprenticeship at 16. There are waivers for all different kinds of occupations. It could be in construction. There's a lot to that, and I'd really love to be able to share more information on it. But sorry, my question is, have we visited this thought? It is part of the university, would be a big part of it. It would bring funding to our schools and our workforce. Sorry, thank you so much for my time.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, is that something that Dana or Brett, you would be able to address? It seems like maybe that's something we might need to look to the state of Alaska to answer that.
Yeah, I think that's like a workshop level question, with a lot of different contributors, and it's not something that I think Brett or I could answer, in our role. But I think those are the types of really good questions and solutions that to be discussed in open forums with the decision makers and the people who have the capacity to make that happen.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And with that, why don't we move on to the next set of speakers? So I'd like to introduce next Sarah Klebs. Sarah is a lifelong Alaskan who was raised in the construction industry. She is passionate about workforce development and strengthening Alaska's communities. She and her husband own and operate CGC Services, which is a mechanical contracting company involving plumbing, heating, and engineering services across Alaska. And they've had this company for the past 10 years. Sarah is a board member of the Associated General Contractors of Alaska, and she serves as the chairman of the Construction Leadership Committee and is a member of the organization's Workforce Development Committee. So we're so happy to have Sarah join us. And then I'm going to also just go ahead and introduce her co-speaker, Heidi Olson. Many of us know Heidi from her work in at the Department of Corrections, but she is currently the membership director for AGC, Associated General Contractors of Alaska. Her role is to strengthen industry engagement, build partnerships, and support Alaska's construction workforce. And prior to joining AGC, as I mentioned, she was the criminal justice planner with the Alaska Department of Corrections, where she focused on expanding vocational training programs within the correctional facilities and connecting people to employment upon release. So Heidi is originally from Wisconsin, but she has been an Alaskan since 2021. I'm going to spotlight you both, and I think you have a presentation to share, so we'll give you the floor.
Thanks, Mari. And I'll kick it off for us. So as a little context overview, the Associated General Contractors of Alaska is a trade association representing over 600 contractors, subcontractors, specialty contractors, and industry service and suppliers from across the state. We are, as a couple folks have already noted, our members drive our work here through participation in committees. And one of our most active committees here at AGC is our Workforce Development Committee. Our members are the employers that we talk about when we're looking at these great charts, when we're having these workforce development conversations. And so we're really excited to be able to cultivate workforce development activities, be involved in schools on behalf of our members. And I'll put the small plug out there, and Sarah, I'm sure will too. Our Workforce Development Committee actively looks for opportunities to be a part of programs in schools and engage with job seekers. So if you are a teacher, if you are a post-secondary educator, or someone else involved with workforce development, you're welcome to reach out to AGC. You're welcome to email me directly, and I'll put you into contact with the right folks. But we would love to try to be involved with your programs as much as possible and promote engagement in the construction industry. So without further ado, we'll hop into the PowerPoint. So we are here today to talk about careers in construction from the employer's perspective. And I want to start with acknowledging that construction is more than the few jobs that we've highlighted so far today. Construction is more than these folks that are out on the job site that you see in the image. And Sarah, if you want to click into the next slide. A lot of times when we're talking about construction, we talk about carpenters, plumbers, we talk about the folks swinging a hammer on the job site. And of course, construction is those people. But it's important to remember that construction is a process from site preparation all the way to building completion. So we're talking about the surveyors, the initial excavation and site preparation crews, the folks doing the actual construction, the folks doing finishing, landscaping, from everyone who's involved with a project and a job site from start to finish. And additionally, we are also talking about everyone behind the scenes that makes the construction company run as any other business. So construction is more than just those folks doing the hands-on work in the field. It's also the legal counsel, the permit and regulatory compliance folks, the accounting folks, the administrators, the project managers, the logisticians behind the scenes that are making sure the lumber, the mortar, everything that's needed for that project is there and readily available to the folks doing the work on the job site. So as we talk about construction and workforce development, it's important to remember that this is also a business and there's a place in the industry for everyone, regardless of skill set, regardless of interest. If you have a skill, we have a place for you somewhere within the construction industry. And then if we hop to the next slide, another point that I always like to put on the front end of presentations like this is wage rates. In construction, although the folks at ISER have informed us of that, they talked a little bit about some of the areas of improvement for pay equality and equity in the construction industry. By and large, the construction industry is a great place to make money without a college degree in some cases and without a ton of investment. The industry really is ready, prepared, and wants to invest in our workforce. And so the construction industry is a great place to come and learn on the job and advance very quickly in a variety of roles. So the data we have here on the screen is from the most recent pamphlet 600 that AGC helped negotiate. This is the generalized wage rates across a variety of labor and skilled trades positions in the state. So the black line is the base wage rate. It, simply put, that is the what do you make per hour? The answer to that question that many people talk about, that is the base hourly rate. But the gray value is the total package of that position, the average value of benefits to include insurance, training, pensions, you name it. The construction industry is one of the last industries where we still see really robust pension programs, and we really see investment being made on the employer side into additional training, professional development, and education. And so what I want to emphasize is that the bars that you're seeing here and the dollar figures that we're talking about are entry level for the first tier employee at those positions. So meaning coming in, we are going to see a plumber and steam fitter, for example, averaging about $46 an hour, which is great, especially for someone coming out of high school, someone just getting started in their career. that is a great rate to start at. And what we see in construction is really great trajectory and defined tiered advancement systems. Raises are inevitable. If you're willing to work hard, advancement in positions is pretty inevitable, which is awesome. The red line that's going through the center of the chart delineates the roughly $48 an hour mark that's needed to reach $100,000 a year at a 40-hour work week. So a standard Monday through Friday 40-hour work week. That red line is the hourly rate needed to reach the $100,000 threshold, what a lot of people think of as a great salary across the state. But what's important to remember is that when we're talking about construction, we're really rarely talking about a 40-hour work week. Generally, we're seeing folks working anywhere from 50 and up, sometimes upwards of 80 hours in a given work week, which is often compensated at time and a half, additional benefits therein. And so again, there really is trajectory for everyone in this industry. And I want to emphasize that there's really great earning potential right off the bat, and potential that only increases the longer someone is willing to stay within the construction industry. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Heidi. So one thing that is really a barrier for the people coming into the construction industry is the misconceptions, right? Construction industry holds, certain feelings that people associate it with, and that can limit what people are willing to, that they're even willing to explore at it. Traditionally, construction can be seen as, you're just out there working manual labor. It's not really a career path. It's just it's not a professional thing. It's just where people end up. So I think changing that is a huge will benefit the construction industry. And I'm seeing that shift. I think over the years, it's definitely, there's the state or the country recognizes that there's an issue we need construction workers. And so just shifting that narrative has been very beneficial. Construction is a lot of it. You are earning while you're learning. You're on the job site. If you're in an apprenticeship, a lot of times you're working full time and you're making, great wages while earning, a license. And there's lots of opportunities for leadership, whether it's moving up the path and maybe one day owning your own company, being a project manager. There's lots of opportunities for that leadership growth. There's a lot of blossoming of technology in the construction industry right now, especially with some of the AI integration, but there's, tech doesn't mean you're sitting necessarily, that you're working for a computer company, right? Technology has infiltrated really every industry at this point, but definitely in construction, there's some pretty amazing advances there. And as Heidi mentioned before, the earning potential it's incredible. For most industries, construction stands out way ahead as far as making higher, amounts of money with what, early on. And obviously there's entrepreneurship opportunities. There's lots of ways to grow in the construction industry and then start your own company. So there's lots of fun ways to grow in construction. What employers are looking for. I'm an employer. We hired our first employee in 2021, and I've been employer in the past. I kind of call myself a serial entrepreneur. So I have about almost 20 years experience as being an employer. And the big thing that we've noticed the shift in construction is there's not a lot of qualified candidates because there's not enough people to do the work. So we're shifting what our focus is on what's important, what matters. In the construction especially, there's kids coming up the pipeline who maybe have parents that are, in the tech industry. And I've sat down and talked to people who've never even used a drill before or a hammer. They just don't know. Whereas, 50 years ago, it was pretty standard to have a set of tools at home. And a lot of these people nowadays don't even have tools in their home. They're not raised with tools. So shifting that, what is priority for us when somebody comes up looking for a job, it's attitude. Attitude is our number one. It's very, it's important in anything you do in life, I believe, but especially right now in construction. We're not so concerned with if you, have experience doing anything. We'll train you. And, we as a company really, really shifted our focus a couple years ago when we realized how difficult it was to find a licensed journeyman plumber. Is very difficult. You are, I think they mentioned earlier in their slides that you're competing against other employers. And that is 100% it. There are no licensed plumbers not working right now. They're all working. And Alaska is a small town, really. So we know a lot of people in the industry. My husband was raised in this industry where we have, family business connected to us, multiple family businesses. And so you start getting to where you're competing with your family members for skilled people. So we kind of shifted our attitude about that a couple years ago and said, you know what, we're looking for people with great attitude who want to learn, and we're going to start training them. And I've talked to other people in the industry that they're doing the same thing. It's more about finding somebody who is a good person, and we'll train them. So, there shouldn't be any feeling that, oh, I need to know something about construction to get started in it, because that's not the case. There's workers out there who we're ready and willing and eager to train. Just having some of these good, basic, solid foundations makes all the difference. So how do you start in the construction industry? The exciting thing about construction is there are lots of different ways to do it. There is, you can get into a training program. So you can go down to AvTech. You can get signed on with NIT and learn how to drive truck. The university has programs. There's lots of different options for, in a similar aspect of like going to college. You go and you get the training you need. We currently have 3 actual apprentices working for us right now who went through the AvTech program, and I will plug that program. It is a fabulous program. We've been very impressed with it. All of the 3 guys we have that came through that program are fabulous workers, and they kind of have that solid foundation of knowledge. So we've been really impressed with them. Other options are apprenticeship programs, and apprenticeship programs, you're usually working for someone, and it's an application process. You can apply through a union. You can apply at Associated Builders and Contractors. You can a lot of employers have apprenticeship programs. We have our own apprenticeship program. And it's an application process. They interview you, and then you get matched to a company, and they'll take on your apprenticeship and provide you the training that you need while running through this apprenticeship program. And on the job training as well, you can, we talk in some of our workforce development presentations. You can just get a job working at a construction company, and you might be sweeping floors right now, but they're going to start training you how to do stuff. And there's ways to gain experience there and decide, hey, I kind of like watching these guys do this. I want to get involved in that. And they move you up. So there's opportunities. Most of these apprenticeship and on-the-job trainings, you're looking, again, similar to a college degree, about 8,000 hours, which is about 4 years worth of work. But you're earning while you're working, and that wage is very it's a high wage. You're making good money to start your family and work towards something. And once you have that license, you saw the chart Heidi pointed out earlier, there's really high potential for high wage earning with all of this. So lots of good options to get into this stuff. here's just an example of one area that you could get involved. Equipment operator, there's a high need for heavy equipment operators. There's lots of that workforce is aging out, and there's not a lot of young coming in through there. But as you can see in here, I'll just highlight some of these numbers. I mean, these journeymen are making, $46 to $63 an hour. That's a great wage. These guys have, one thing about construction, these guys have opportunities to grow and mentor the younger group and working up. And again, you're just increasing your wages, but there's lots of different specific things in being an equipment operator. There's lots of different opportunities, and you learn on the job. And most of the construction industries, these are all very similar. There's a need, right now that they're saying that there's 1,300 workers needed per year, new workers in the construction industry every year. And that's an impressive increase, just here in the state of Alaska. We're gonna, and that just grows every single year. That's for those 2022 through 2032 numbers. So, we're highlighting the equipment operator, but this is across the board. This is, I actually think plumbing is even more dire in their need for people right now. So, but this is across the board, everywhere, definitely construction is needed. And really, construction isn't just about the project. It's not just about showing up and building a building. There's so much more to it. Construction helps the community. It brings jobs to the community, not only during the construction, but after, right? We're building buildings that require staffing. It's providing, it's building the future of Alaska. There's projects all over the state that are, helping to grow these rural communities, which is, providing them stuff to help their community be a solid foundation in the state and continue to grow. It's a great opportunity for us to bring the rural community kids. I mean, I know that the numbers aren't great on those kids getting into the construction industry, and it should be. I agree. I think that is a huge issue right now. We're building buildings in these rural communities, but we don't have the rural communities so much involved. So I think somebody kind of had a question about that earlier. I would love to see somehow more of a collaboration to get these rural communities involved. That they have people who it would be a great chance for them to get involved in their community, build something in their community, learn a skill, and that they can take with them and stay within their communities. I think there's a great opportunity there. But construction's a huge part of all of Alaska and building it. So I'm going to let Heidi kind of wrap this up, but I will just say somebody else kind of plugged Associated General Contractors of Alaska. I'm going to shamelessly do the same thing. They've been a very key part of our company. They've been very important to us. Us as a company try to be very community focused, and AGC has really helped us with that. They really help us all keep kind of that bigger picture of what's going on and where the needs are across the board. I don't zero in and focus on, we need plumbers. It's an industry-wide problem, and everybody needs to be focused on it, because I can't plumb a building that the carpenters didn't put up. So it's an industry-wide problem. So anybody in the industry really should be aware of it. And AGC kind of helps to connect all of those dots for us. And so that's been a really good, they've got lots of great information. But, I think being a part of the Workforce Development Committee with AGC has also helped me get involved in just sharing, we go to high schools and just talk about how there's such a need for construction. And there's a lot of different areas that are working towards raising awareness for construction and getting more kids involved. There's lots of great programs. The school districts are getting involved, the state's getting involved, and it's really exciting to see all of these people kind of come together and say, this is a problem. Let's see what we can do about it. And I just really hope that there's a lot of continued momentum in that area and that we can all kind of come together and do this as a state to help move things forward. So thank you everybody for listening and letting me be a part of this. Heidi?
I couldn't have summed it up better myself, Sarah. Thank you. And so I wanted to make sure that we threw a few resources in. I know we have a lot of educators and folks working directly with local labor on the call today. So as Sarah put much more eloquently, workforce development is a huge priority of AGC's membership. And so as such, we've stood up We Build Alaska. This is our statewide campaign aimed at engaging the local labor market with construction-related jobs. And so there are links to the website, and I would encourage anyone that is working with students, working with prospective employees, please reach out to AGC, and we'd love to connect you with our Workforce Development Committee and try to find a way to work together to support the local labor market. I've also included links to AGC of America's scholarship program, which is going to be opening up July 1st and that will be a collegiate, a 4-year university scholarship program. AGC of Alaska and AGC of America offer a variety of scholarship programs to students entering the trades, entering apprenticeships, as well as entering 4-year institutions. AGC of Alaska's scholarship window just closed, unfortunately, but AGC of America's will open soon. So please feel free to share that link with any students in your life. I've also linked our training calendar. AGC of Alaska is the largest provider of AK CSOL, corrosion and sediment control certification, and construction quality management required for state and federal projects. As the season's ramping up, consider checking out trainings that are available in the near future. And then if you want to learn more about just what AGC does as a whole, or if your business is interested in joining AGC, you got that link there too. So thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Heidi, for this wonderful presentation. I'm going to remove your spotlight so we can see everybody and see if this group has a question or two for you. All right. Well, I just really appreciate you both highlighting the tremendous wage opportunities. I think that really resonated with a lot of us here about how you can make, just right out of high school without a college degree, make a really good wage even at the entry level in construction. Really appreciate how you highlighted the different pathways and how you can get into these construction trades. I love the three methods that you highlighted. If we could, I know we'll get a copy of your slides, so we'll try to make that available on our website. And really like that on that, Sarah, you're talking about, maybe in the old days, people were looking for folks to come in with these skills ready to go, but these days you're looking for good people that are willing to work hard, and that the industry members themselves are just willing to work with individuals and then train them up. And so that's good news for the workforce, that you can come in with just a good attitude and get training on the job. And so those are some highlights that key takeaways that I'm leaving with. Kind of going back to Dana and Brett, your presentations. I don't know if we still have them on here. But yeah, hi Dana. I really, some of the things that I highlighted from your presentation is that we have projected growth in Alaska that's significantly higher than the rest of the US. That's opportunity right there. And I appreciate the challenges that you highlighted that employers are telling you in your study that you highlighted. I found it very interesting that 1/5 of CTE classes in high schools are construction related. And I see Devin on here. Maybe that's no surprise to the high school professionals that are on here, but that's interesting. And again, opportunity that we really are, that the high schools really are the beginning training grounds, and they really are training individuals to go into construction. And sort of that data point highlights that for me. And the other thing that Dana and Brett mentioned that I thought was so interesting is that the retention in construction programs are so good that students who enter those training sessions do complete them. And so again, I feel like this is opportunity. And then a theme that I saw in the chat and through the questions is that popped up is how can we get rural communities more connected and more involved? And so that's one of the biggest takeaways I'm going to walk away from this meeting with is what we can do to make sure that rural communities have better information to the projects that are coming up, getting rural students into those pathways. And so I didn't mean to take the floor here, everyone, but I'm just really pleased and excited for what we were able to learn today. With that, I just want to give our instructors just one final opportunity. If you have any closing thoughts or comments, I just a final opportunity to say anything you want to, and then we will close our meeting if there's no final questions. All right. Well, just a big thank you to Dana, Brett, Heidi, and Sarah for your wonderful presentation today. Again, just a reminder, no BEC meeting in July, but we'll be back here in August. We will have a presentation by Trident Seafoods. Stephanie Moreland will talk about some workforce myth busting related to the fisheries industry. Really excited about that. And I believe they will be joined by the Pacific Seafood Processors Association. So we'll have an opportunity to learn all about the fishing industry. So with that, thank you, everyone. Enjoy Alaska summer. Enjoy fishing and hiking, and we'll see you in August. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Mari.
Thank
Nice
you.
work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia, for that safety moment. Everyone wear your flotation device out on the water.
Thank you very much. It was very informative. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Pam.